Welcome back to Nation of Glory, the place where stories aren't just told, they're felt. Where heroes, villains, and dreamers collide on the grand stage of destiny. And today, we dive deep into one of the most complex, electrifying, and polarizing figures in modern wrestling. A man who calls himself better than you, and you know it. But behind the arrogance, the sharp suits, and the golden tongue, lies a story most people never hear. This is not just the story of MJF the wrestler. It's the story of Maxwell Jacob Friedman, the boy who turned rejection into fire, and confidence into a weapon. It's a story of pain, pride, and the power of believing in yourself, even when no one else does. Born on March 15, 1996, in Plainview, New York, Max wasn't born into wrestling royalty. He didn't come from a legendary bloodline or a family with connections to the business. He came from ordinary roots, but even as a kid, he was different. He didn't just want to fit in. He wanted to stand out. To be remembered. At school, he wasn't always the most popular kid. In fact, he faced teasing and rejection for being outspoken, for believing in himself too much. While other kids dreamed quietly, Max declared his dreams out loud, that one day, he'd be on television, holding championship gold. They laughed. They mocked him. But that only fueled him more. You see, MJF wasn't built to be liked. He was built to win. And every time someone doubted him, every time someone called him delusional, he turned that pain into performance. It wasn't about proving them wrong, it was about proving himself right. From a young age, Max was already performing. He was in musical theater, acting in school plays, mastering the art of presence, learning how to command attention. Those early experiences shaped the performer we see today. The confidence, the charisma, the way he controls the crowd, it all began long before he stepped into a wrestling ring. But it wasn't all applause and spotlight. There were moments when he felt invisible. When his own self-belief was the only thing holding him together. And yet, through all that noise, one thing remained clear: he wanted to be the best. Not just good, not average, the best. In high school, he played football, an athlete with determination and heart. But even then, his eyes were set elsewhere. When others were chasing scholarships, Max was chasing greatness. He started training in professional wrestling at just 18 years old, attending the Create A Pro Wrestling Academy under Brian Myers and Pat Buck, names that would later shape many careers in the modern wrestling landscape. And from the very first day in that ring, something about MJF stood out. It wasn't his size. It wasn't his strength. It was his mind. He understood something most young wrestlers didn't, that wrestling wasn't just about moves. It was about moments. About connection. About story. He wasn't trying to be the toughest guy in the room. He was trying to be the most unforgettable. Soon, he began performing across the independent circuit, chaotic gyms, dimly lit halls, small crowds. But whether there were 50 fans or 500, MJF walked in like a star. He wore suits when everyone else wore hoodies. He spoke like he already belonged on TV. He acted like the main event, long before anyone gave him that spot. And slowly, people started to notice. He captured titles in promotions like CZW and MLW, showing that his mouth wasn't the only dangerous thing about him. He could back it up in the ring, crisp, technical, and confident. He was loud, cocky, manipulative, but talented beyond question. In every locker room, he played the part of the villain. But deep down, behind that mask of arrogance, was a kid who still remembered what it felt like to be underestimated. The truth is, MJF wasn't just playing a character. He was creating armor. Every insult, every doubt he ever heard as a kid became a brick in the wall he built around himself. The confidence, the ego, the suits, they weren't just for show. They were protection. Because in a world that often rewards the loudest voice, he made sure his was the one no one could ignore. By the time he reached his early 20s, MJF had already made a name for himself as one of wrestling's brightest young stars, and one of its most hated villains. But hate didn't bother him. He thrived on it. He understood that love and hate come from the same place: attention. And as long as they were talking about him, he was winning. Then, in 2019, came the opportunity that would change everything. A new company was forming, All Elite Wrestling. A chance for a new generation to shine. And when MJF signed with AEW, the wrestling world was about to meet a different kind of villain. Not one who hid behind theatrics, but one who embodied reality. He didn't pretend to be larger than life. He was larger than life. Every word out of his mouth cut like a blade. Every promo blurred the line between truth and performance. Fans booed him. Critics despised him. But secretly, everyone watched him. Because even when you hated him, you couldn't ignore him. MJF brought something back to wrestling that had been missing: unpredictability. You never knew if what he was saying was scripted or real. And that's what made him dangerous. He was a throwback to an era where wrestlers lived their characters 24/7. But MJF didn't just live his, he became it. He was ruthless, ambitious, and brilliant, and people loved to hate him. Behind the scenes, though, the same intensity that made him great also made him restless. He demanded perfection from himself. Every promo, every match, every segment, he wanted it to be the best. He studied legends. He observed how people reacted. He didn't just wrestle to win, he wrestled to leave a mark.